All right, we should be good.
Okay, I will call this October 9th, 2025 special meeting of the Knox County Commission to order. We will be missing one of our commissioners, but I don't think that we have any votes planned or anything. The only item on the agenda is a discussion of the fiscal 2026 budget. And so I will hand the meeting over to the county administrator to present it.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for pivoting to a 2 p.m. meeting today. I think it'll be better for everybody, but appreciate your flexibility, including our commission. I want to just open with the fact that the team that you have in front of you has been through a trying few years, and I'm just very proud of who we have in this room and just lucky to work with them on a daily basis. So I anticipate this budget process to be seamless and transparent and moving in a really good direction for the county. This is a proposed draft budget. We're still massaging numbers. We still have some discussions to have, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit. One thing that we won't be diving into too much today are wages. We still have union negotiations to finalize. We have not finalized the MRI study. So there are still some moving parts, but mainly we wanted to discuss some major changes and make sure that the commission is in the same direction as what we've proposed thus far. As you know, 2025 is a challenging year for the county. We had a lot of personnel changes, a lot of big picture things happening. Obviously, the biggest impact was to the communications center. We had to make some necessary changes in there, both monetary and otherwise. Had we not made those changes, the monetary impact would have been a lot greater than we saw this year. And then a few things just overall around the budget. We did remove Zoom. We have free platforms through our Office and Google Suite, so we removed that as a cost reduction. We've moved Town Hall streams, which is what we're recording on today. It's an extra cost. There's free options for us to use moving forward, so we are trying to just dig in to find those things. The corrections budget that you're going to see today, it's high. We are still diligently working on that. The team we have here, Finance Director, Jail Administrator, Sheriff, and Chief Deputy are working on it almost daily to see what we can do to massage those numbers further. And then one other small change, the MDEA, which is the drug type of position through the Sheriff's Office, is no longer being reimbursed through the state. So that is a cost we're going to have to absorb this year. A couple of other little things, sewage and water increased through main water 20%, kind of out of our control, so you'll see those impacts there. Bottled water or water coolers that we have everywhere, that also increased through our vendor. Computer supplies and equipment, you'll see some changes in there a little bit, but what our IT team has done is gotten us on a rotation so that it's not a bunch of computer supplies and equipment replacement one year. They're getting us in a good system to do that a little bit better. And the biggest thing is ARPA funding has ended. So all of our projects mainly went through that. We're no longer going to have those, that funding moving forward. Yeah, that's about it. I was going to go through each department just briefly, just major changes for them, and then if a department wants to step up and explain any questions that you have, and kind of briefly go through it just at a high level for major changes. And then next week we'll dive into more of the line by line with the budget committee.
Can you just, for anybody who might be watching, go over the schedule of what we're doing here in terms of when the budget is going to be a little closer to finalized, when we're having our hearings and that?
Absolutely, yeah. So next Thursday we'll be meeting as our first joint commission and budget meeting. That's when we'll dive into all of the changes. It won't be a meeting to vote on anything. It's just kind of the initial kickoff to kind of do a little bit further of what we're doing today. Budget binder notebooks will be available the week after. The first public hearing will be on October 30th, and then we meet every Thursday thereafter. There's about 3 or 4 departments that present each night for the vote, and then the final public hearing is December 11th.
There's a point at which we have the budget finally tuned enough that we submit it to all of the different towns?
Yes, that is going to be on October 27th, so around when the budget binders will be available for pickup. So we'll get those all to the budget committee and send the same thing out to all of the towns, and then we have our GIS manager working on the visual budget again, a little bit more enhanced to this year with more information, a more user-friendly tool, so we'll be presenting that at the next meeting as well, just to kind of reiterate everything.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. I'm not going to necessarily go through the summaries or the dispatch fees or anything like that because no numbers are final, so those are still kind of waiting to finalize. If you pop into admin, it's just first by alphabet. I think the biggest changes are we did increase our tolls, parking, and ferry, so we can allow more money for us to travel around to the different towns as we meet with them next year in kind of their territory. And then with the absorption of the GIS manager position, there's a couple of pieces of technology and equipment that we need to bring over to the admin budget from the EMA budget. Other than that, pretty straightforward. Things stayed mostly the same, if not kind of decreased. But feel free to ask any questions.
Really haven't had a chance to look at it enough.
Yep.
Have any questions to really ask?
Okay.
Commissioner Hind has.
No, I mean, I did take a look, and the things you've already mentioned, I did notice,
Okay.
and so I imagine you'll be hitting the highlights of, especially the things that are going up. But it's actually, if there are things that are going down too that we should be aware of for any particular reason, maybe flag that for us too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think next week we will kind of go more line by line. I
Yeah.
wanted to use today to just, when we have a major decision, make sure we have your direction.
Great.
But for admin, there's really not much.
I'll just say I'm excited about the traveling meetings. I think that's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. The next department is building maintenance for both public safety and the courthouse. Jim is not here today, but again, not too many changes. I kind of mentioned the sewage and water are increasing, the water bottle vendor, just some things out of our control again. One thing I've been updating you in my reports is the security and access system we have at the county really needs to be looked at. Our IT director is working with myself and our maintenance director to figure out what that looks like, so that is budgeted for next year in that building maintenance budget.
And that, so that would be the whole county? So that would be here, airport?
Yes. Corrections. Yes,
Corrections.
yeah. Yep.
And is that number, that you have in there right now, does that seem like that is going to need more reworking, or does that feel like that's?
So I know Zach, our IT director, is working diligently on getting actual quotes.
Okay.
This is just best he could do without them getting back to him. He's
Okay.
done a little bit of research, but I'm still waiting for those.
Yeah.
So hoping to flesh that out by next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
You're welcome. Any other questions on building maintenance?
No?
Okay. Next one is deeds. I know we do have Maddie in the room. Again, not too many changes with deeds. Pretty straightforward. I mean, copies go up. The office licenses, as I mentioned, as we're getting into a more IT rotation through our equipment. I think when Deeds, Maddie from Deeds presents her budget to the budget committee, she can go into a little bit about the tax and fee changes. We discussed it with her, and it kind of seems it will, I don't want to use the word come out to a wash in the end, but we had some increases and decreases and things like that, but I think she'll provide some more detail when she presents for the But if you have any questions for Maddie, feel free to.
Not really, but once again, this is a department that makes money.
Yes.
At the end of the,
Yes.
it covers its expenses
Yes.
as well as, thank you.
Deeds and probate, yes. Next is district attorney. I know we have the district attorney in the room. So again, not too many changes outside what I kind of mentioned as our overall increase. Computer supplies, equipment, there's some state requirements through the district attorney as she is a state employee where we do need to use Zoom specifically for that office. We do need to have specific tablets for that office so they can access certain things. So that's where you see some of the increases. Other than that, things pretty much status quo or increasing how the world is increasing. And again, yes, we do have the DA, so if you have any questions, feel free.
I guess my overriding question is, we have been discussing for the last 2 years or so a management survey on wages as well as manpower. Does this budget incorporate those changes? And if it does, would you be willing to point those out as we go over those?
So it won't point them out because that study has not been accepted by the commission. So once you vote on it on Tuesday, then all of that will be fleshed out probably in the following Thursday meeting, and we'll bring all of that to light. But without approvals, and we're trying to finalize some, regarding the positions and wages.
But so that's not included in this. This is the status quo budget based on what we've done in the past for
Yes.
the most part.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there will be some ebbs and flows based on your decision next week.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Good with district attorney. Okay. EMA, same spiel, same increases. We do have the EMA director here. I think one important note, and I don't know if you want to speak to it, I was just going to bring up raise, because it's a positive for the county, but... Oh, it's okay. Would you like to, or would you like me to?
Well, really, the only thing, I mean, you guys already know about RAVE. The last couple of years, we paid it out of existing money pools that dispatch and I already had. That money's gone now, because we spent it, so now it needs to go into my budget as originally planned. We are getting to the point where we are almost ready to release it to the public that it exists.
You? Any questions?
I guess small things, communications and EMAs, they've had the same break room fridge for 20, 30 years. So finally replacing that next year, which is a small win, but it's used 24/7, so it's time. Yeah, so that's a small thing, but exciting.
It'll be interesting to see if they get 30 years out of the new one or not.
See how things have changed.
Yeah,
They don't make them like they used to.
exactly.
Next is finance. Finance director is here if you have specific questions, of course, but same thing, computer supplies and equipment was a big change. We do have our Munis system, which is going to be doing our timesheets and all of that, so that's incorporated.
office licenses, so those are just, is that new software or something that?
You'll see that actually in almost every budget.
Oh, okay.
That's given to us as a cost from IT.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, thanks.
Just some departments that don't have a lot of expense in that line, it sticks out a little bit more.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
mine.
yeah.
IT is next. We talked about the access system that we're going to be rolling out. That's not in the IT budget. It's the building maintenance budget, but it will be something IT is working on. His computer supplies and equipment line is obviously increasing a little bit with all of these changes, and I believe a network migration. So those are the major ones in that computer supplies and equipment line. One major change for IT, we have been with Spillman, Motorola, Flex, whatever you want to call it, for many, many years. We were without a contract that entire time. Nobody had ever been able to find it from the initial inception of the agreement. So our IT director went ahead and was proactive and negotiated a contract with them that I feel is fair. It's going to add a ton of add-ons for our public safety departments, a lot of safety features for our patrol deputies, a lot of tools for our communications department. So all in all, I think it'll be worth it. I'll get you a full write-up of what those additions are, but that contract cost will increase because it's been probably 40 years since we've looked at it. So you will see that cost impact in here.
We have in the past talked about the workload for IT, and we added a new employee last year.
Yes.
Are we looking at adding new people, continuing to add new people?
Not at this time.
Because it doesn't look like it according to this budget.
Correct. Yeah. I think they are still working on their positions, still training. I know when Zach took over the role, there were many projects that had been left. So I think they're kind of sorting out their roles and getting those done. Until they get to a good point, I don't think we'll really hear any needs.
And I don't know if this is the place to talk about it, but in going to county commissioner meetings with other county commissioners, one of the things that has come up in general is cybersecurity of one sort or another. There have been a few instances around counties in Maine where somebody has gotten into the system and held their system hostage, basically.
Yes.
Are we taking steps, is that included in this budget to protect ourselves from that?
Yes. So the cowbell that you shared with us, we did look into that at the beginning of the year, I think when Malcolm initially sent it. There was also an opportunity through cowbell for some sort of grant. I can't remember what the grant was. But everything that was in the grant to help with IT cybersecurity, we were already doing. So the two-factor authentication, the VPNs, even we did a whole overhaul a month or two ago where everybody has a 20-character password now and a different way to log in. So everything that we were going to potentially get funding on or support for, we already have in place. So we didn't feel like it was worth doing. I know he's hyper aware of it because of the cowbell emails, but I think we have a pretty good handle on what our requirements are as far as county government, even having the GOV at the end, because I know a lot of towns are still working on that. So if anything, I'd like to see how we can get the towns to our level to make sure they're still being secure next year.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Probate. I told her she would be fourth, and she's seventh, so I apologize, Julie. So probate, pretty similar. I know their passports have increased year after year, which is great. There is the, what am I blanking on? The real ID requirement. So we'll see how that affects passports and so on and so forth as for travel. I don't assume much will change because international travel is still international travel. But curious just to kind of watch that trend next year. I think the biggest thing was getting them a meeting owl, so when they have intense family court cases, we're actually able to see the people that are speaking, which I think is very important, and they don't have to borrow other people's.
That actually makes me think about our meetings in the municipalities. Is that the plan to purchase an owl for that, or do we have an owl?
We have one, yes.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we have one that we can use. IT has it, but has let me know that we can share it with admin.
Okay.
So we'll kind of share that on that end, and we'll get probate their own for their own courtroom. Yeah, it's a little bit more secure. But again, we have the register of probate if any specific questions come up. Good? Okay. I'm going to skip the sheriff for one moment. And I'm just going to go to the miscellaneous page. These are the nonprofits that submit requests to the county to help fund their missions. Knox Lincoln Cooperative Extension, Knox Lincoln Water and Soil, McCog, Restorative Justice, and the Mutual Aid Association. So we've received their requests. What they request is what I kept in the proposal. I didn't want to change those figures. They will all be presenting to you on their last year, their requests, the work that they're doing throughout the budget process. So you'll hear from them directly. But if you feel any of those numbers should change at all, let me know.
Could you remind me about the Knox County Mutual Aid, just because that's a big change from 2025 to 26?
Yeah, so in 24, it was closer to 18. I think they did kind of an ebb and flow thing. So last year was only 6, so this year is a lot higher. And I just got the packet yesterday, so I have the fish in my brain for the reasoning behind it.
I mean, we can discuss next week.
Okay, yeah. It's more around training collaboration.
Okay.
That's a big need, as we know.
Yes.
So they have a lot of ideas. We'll kind of flesh them out as we go. But this is the number to help with those the training and having somebody actually do the training.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. Thank you.
Of course. Okay. We'll backtrack to the sheriff. Oh, patrol. I'll let him take it away. Okay.
Boy.
Let me take it from here. Great. Patrol. I was hoping you do the airport first. It's the easiest. So,
Just dive in.
yeah. So, of all our budgets, I have the largest two, which is the law enforcement and the corrections. For law enforcement in particular, what you see before you is just status quo, essentially. There is still some ebb and flow there, but Captain Smith in particular, who helps manage this budget, has been doing some pretty diligent work to make sure he stays up on current trends. As you know, a lot of things are increasing pretty significantly in our world, unfortunately. Some of the challenges that are not yet in this budget, and I think part of what we're here to maybe get an answer from you folks on, is a need for more law enforcement coverage. So this last year, thanks to you not having me assist as the county administrator, thank you for that, I appreciate that. Getting back to being the sheriff, I've been to, I think, approximately 9 of the 18 communities at their public meetings with their boards, and had some pretty interesting discussions about, in their opinion, a lack of law enforcement coverage throughout the county. And I've explained to all those boards what our challenge is around staffing. We've always shied away from giving the intel out, if you will, but I've been much more public with the fact that on any given day, you're only looking at about 2 to 3 law enforcement officers covering 14 of the 18 communities in this county. Many of the towns find that to be inadequate and have said that they are willing to write letters, come to meetings, do what they have to do, but they want more law enforcement coverage in their county. What that number looks like is really up to you folks. My opinion is I need 8 more rural patrol deputies and 1 more detective, and I feel that is what would be adequate for our county to give us better coverage 24 hours throughout all of the 18 communities. You know, we have 4 with police departments. I'll touch on this a little bit. It's not really public information, but it does need to be out there for you. 3 in particular is some police departments are still having staffing challenges. I've been asked to help provide coverage to a couple of our communities through a few hours of the days. I have accepted that at a no cost because they do pay county taxes like all of the other towns. It's a trial basis. We're meeting roughly week to week just to assess that and ensure that it isn't overburdensome. They do understand if it gets to be overburdensome, there may need to be some financial obligation to meet that. But the point that the chiefs and I have talked about is that we keep stealing each other's people. We're continuing to just shuffle the same people around because people are chasing wages or benefits or whatever it may be. We're dealing with a housing crisis. If there are houses available, they're usually too far out of the price range for people who live here. Approximately a quarter of our staff live outside of the county, unfortunately, because they just can't find either adequate housing or cheap enough housing to live here. But anyway, the good news is we are fully staffed. So what I think we are proposing is, of those 8 and 1, I think that we're looking at 4 deputies and 1 detective is what we would think is reasonable for this year. The administrator has presented you some numbers for you to digest, give us feedback on. If it's not 4, if it's 2, if it's 1, but at least something more than what we currently have. But like I said, at the end of the day, we need 8 more. Whether that's 8 more in the next few years, if that's 8 more in the next 8 years, whatever it may be, our communities are getting bigger, and the demand for service is getting much more repetitive. And that demand for service is also much more time intensive, either because of the complexity of the type of situation like a yellow flag law individual. Some of those cases can take upwards of 12 to 14 hours, and usually takes a detective and a deputy to manage it. So other examples of just how violent individuals are. People are very agitated with each other. A lot of our complaints deal with either damage to personal property or damage to each other through either family matters or neighborhood disputes, those types of things. That ties up a lot of time for deputies. And this is why we're hearing what we're hearing from the towns, is specifically those quality of life issues for the neighborhoods, speeding cars, all these other things are getting put on the back burner because my staff can't get to those because they're busy dealing with those more violent or higher crisis types of situations. So that's really the demand of why we need these extra positions, is to try to get back to helping to also get to those quality of life types of calls for our neighborhoods.
The request you're putting forward, 2 things, I guess. One is that's not included in this draft budget.
Correct.
And 2 is, as we go through this process, it's not going to be a matter of whether people from those towns come and tell us they need that service, because we know they need that service. It's going to be, unfortunately, whether the citizens are going to be willing to pay the taxes that are going to go up because of that. I mean, unfortunately, we can't make this stuff up. We know that it's going to cost money. And so one of the things we're going to have to do as this process goes forward is get hard numbers as we look through this, so that we have something that everybody's talking about when they say, oh, that's what it's going to cost. Then we can figure out whether it's 2 officers or 4 officers or 8 all at once. Because I think we've discussed this, is adding 4 officers is not just putting 4 people on the payroll.
Correct.
In addition to the benefits, there's all the equipment that you guys need to do your jobs, as well as more training, as well as more. So it's not, oh, we're just going to add another officer. We're adding an officer and all the accoutrements.
Correct. And we do have those numbers,
Yes.
like I said, they just were not in this budget, because we need to have a discussion with you for that approval to move forward that way. So at some point, I think you will get those, probably next week's meeting.
If not before, yeah.
When you were meeting with town select boards, were you able to offer an estimate of what you thought, I'm not sure how you shared this information with them. Was that like if we brought on 4 new, this could be the potential impact to your town financially, or did you not get into that level of
So
depth?
most of the towns, we talked individual contracts.
Oh, okay.
I think you and I discussed that at
Yes.
one point as well, and I used that same scenario with them of a contract. So some had talked about 20 hours and sharing with the town, or doing even their own 40-hour, which is great, but there's only 164 hours in a week, so you're only covering 40 of those 100 and something hours.
Right.
So there's still 100 plus hours that are still expected to be covered by rural patrol. So does a contract really make sense if, for those 40 hours just for you? Or can you use, so the example I use is if it's $200,000 just for, let's say the town of Union paid $200,000 for a 40-hour deputy. That's one person for 40 hours just in Union at a big cost to that town by itself. Even if they chose to cut that in half and provide $100,000 and get a couple other towns to also provide $100,000, we could potentially hire 3 or 4 deputies, depending on how many 100,000 pots there were, to then be part of that rural patrol and provide that coverage throughout the entire week versus that 40-hour or 20-hour block. So most town select boards thought that was worth talking more about. Some had been resigning themselves to they need dedicated coverage. And when I explained those extra costs, that it's not just bringing somebody on, it's all these other things. One of the things I brought up is what happens when that deputy that you contract wants to take a week of vacation. Who fills their 40 hours? Rural Patrol. So I kept going back to that Rural Patrol still has to cover it, similar to what we're dealing with the towns. We haven't talked about it for a while. Thomaston was the worst of the ones we had to deal with, not in a bad way. When I say worst, they were down to just a police chief. They had no patrol coverage. We were covering everything 24 hours a day for them until they could get their staffing back up, and that took time. They had to hire the staff, they had to train the staff. And so it still gets put back on the sheriff and rural patrol that the sheriff has to fill all of those voids. So to me, that's what makes the most sense is plussing the rural patrol function up so that as these crises happen, we have the staffing to fill that void.
You were able to give them a general sense
Yes.
of what that would mean to them fiscally. So those towns that you did speak with understand. And it sounds like you still have some that you're going to be meeting with? Or?
Trying to,
Yeah,
yes. So
yeah.
I've actually been invited back to a couple for a second round. So St. George has actually invited me back for, I think this will actually be the 3rd time we meet with them. But yes, we're trying to get to all the towns, even the towns that have their own police departments, just because the discussion is affecting everybody. Like I said, we have a police department that has been struggling to get staff recently, and asking us to help fill that void. As long as helping as long as it's not hurting.
Yeah, right. Okay. So they know what they're in for, potentially.
Great. Other questions for the sheriff on this budget?
Not on that topic, no.
Not at this point, thank you.
Why don't you just stay? Sorry, Jacob. Gonna do security or?
Airport security, no big change, really, other than we're still not going to get any federal funding from what we understand. So we are going to still absorb that as part of the county tax base. So no real changes, just the general time and tenure, so the increases that come with that. Any benefit changes, may see some increase or decrease. But otherwise, I don't see a lot of change here. So,
Yeah, not really. I mean, yeah, that pretty much sums it up. No real changes.
Sorry.
So this is basically the same as last year because we're not getting any federal funding to help offset the cost with the increases that come along with having employees and equipment.
There may be slight changes in the 27 budget, so next year is the reopener for the law enforcement union. So there may be some adjustments from there. So we have talked about schedules in the past. It sometimes doesn't make sense to have a deputy just at the airport with no flights for several hours in the winter. So those things may adjust. It just won't be this year. It'll be in the 27 budget potentially.
Thank you.
Why don't we save corrections for last?
Yes.
I'm going to keep Jacob up there. Sorry, Jacob. We'll airport it. So again, airport, I'll let Jacob kind of speak to most of it. No major changes. I think the aircraft parking system increase was you'll see that in your line item because it just looks like a big increase. I think solar's doing way better than expected. And we've decided not to do any major airport projects in 2026 because we've been on a roll for many, many, many years. So typically you would see the capital plan and then you would see airport projects. You're not going to see any airport projects for next year. But I will let Jacob take it from there.
So a caveat to that is that we will be wrapping up projects that have started in 2025 and 2026, but we won't be starting any new projects in 2026. And to touch on the solar panels, yes, the panels themselves, the power that they've been producing have been amazing. They've been great for the airport. They've almost totally completed our electrical expenses, and we're now seeing a lot of revenue from county facilities that were paying CMP. Now they're paying that money to the airport for us offsetting their expenses. So that's been great for the airport. One thing that comes with the solar field, though, is maintaining the grass and the weeds and all that that grows underneath the solar field has been a bit more difficult to maintain than what we originally anticipated. The solution to that was having our per diem employees kind of come in and manage that for a couple hours a week to keep all that trimmed and maintained. It's takes a lot more time than what we thought it would. So there's an increase to the airport maintenance per diem line because of that. A couple times in the comments of this, it mentions, a new system will adjust rates or something like that for where the new system will. Let's see. Trying to find the exact verbiage that it uses, but basically, we're looking at a new system to track the aircraft parking and based aircraft filling and things like that. While going over to this new system, we're also doing an assessment of the rates and fees and see if what we're charging is up to fair market value. I personally don't believe it is, but I've yet to see definitive numbers on what the other surrounding airports are at. More than likely, the rates are probably going to go up, and now a business that monitors the radio will be doing that. If it's approved, then they'll be doing the invoicing for us, and they're tracking that, so we'll likely be collecting more overall. And really, other than that, there aren't too many major changes. Do you guys have any particular questions?
None for me.
Yeah. I guess the big question really on the airport budget, because I just haven't had a chance to really look at it enough, is it says the total for what we're going to be paying winds up being 47% more than we were last year. And so the question is, where's that money basically coming from or going to?
I believe it has been covered in the past, and now we're going to have to tax for it moving forward. But I might not be right.
I have to think about that for a minute.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of little numbers that are up and down, and but I was just curious what this one, at the very end, what it was going to be. It's not income.
Oh, under the total
Under the
200.
total, yeah. Just where
Well,
that,
we're having less revenue than, we're projecting less revenue, which is increasing what we need to ask for to offset our expense.
yeah.
And this year, we are choosing to use some undesignated. We feel comfortable that we have enough in undesignated that we can help supplement the budget, but you don't see that on this page. You see it on the
Oh, okay.
summary page. And by not doing projects this year, that helps us from the expense standpoint.
But so a lot of these, that just brings up something in general. Does this budget as presented use up some of the undesignated, or is that still sitting there waiting for us to figure out how much we're going to apply to the budget?
Other than airport, we do not have any that we can apply from any other funds. The airport is the only opportunity.
Okay. But so it doesn't include any offsetting funds because there just aren't any?
Correct.
Okay.
We were very aggressive in '25, both using undesignated and also depleting reserve accounts that could help offset the budget in some way. So that, in turn, reflects in this year's budget as far as such a large increase.
Which is good that you're keeping tabs on it and that we know, because we have seen in other counties problems because of that. Overestimating and overspending on it. So we're very happy that you're keeping a good eye on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, communications. What a fun place to be. Well, since we have Bob here, I'll let him talk to the technology piece changes if you have any questions around there. Overall, though, not too many changes, just like everything else. We're trying to be a little bit more diligent with our training, so you may see a little increase there now that we have a staff that wants to be here and wants to grow, so we'll see a shift in there. The biggest thing, I think, from my end is we are requesting a new dispatcher to add. We only have 10, which really, similar to patrol, really doesn't allow for any vacations, sick time emergencies, and we have to staff it 24/7, similar to corrections and patrol. So we're trying to slowly start add positions to that. We're asking for one midway through next year to give the director some time to integrate, figure out the team, recruit, and see how that goes. And then we can have another discussion about where that looks. I'll let Bob speak to the major technology changes though.
Just to back onto her one person, if things increase at other departments manpower-wise, this department's going to have to increase to keep up with that call, to keep these guys safe out there. Full support of it, and the sheriff and getting more manpower. They need the more manpower with the way that the world is. We need to keep our citizens safe in this county. And in order to do that, the first line is the dispatch center and making sure that we keep everybody safe. So just keep that in mind. I'm definitely supportive of the sheriff and his request, but we're going to need to support the new director when she comes and potentially says, we need some more staffing just to keep up with everything going around us. But as far as everything else goes, everything's pretty much status quo on the bottom. Other than the increases you're seeing is just companies themselves are increasing. One of the big ones, and she already mentioned it, was the water. That was a big one for us in the increase on the bottled water. There's a couple items. There's one for an Eaton repair for the UPS batteries. That's a big UPS that we have that keeps all of our system running when the power goes out while the generator gets kicked on. So our system doesn't go down at all. It doesn't even see that there's a power issue. The batteries need to be replaced in that. There's like 8 or 9 batteries. I can't remember exactly how many, but it's a big UPS. So that's one of the big increases there. And then some of the software, there was an increase. We're giving municipalities more options on being able to hear dispatches coming out. So if there's a issue with a pager or something, their people are still able to hear. So we're trying to help the municipalities in that line as well. So it benefits the municipalities on some of our increases. Again, you'll see we're replacing computers. So that's just a 2026 budget increase that will disappear, and that line item will pretty much go back to where it is for a while, for about 5 years, because all the computers in the center need to be replaced, and there's 8 of them. So, and 6 of them run 24/7. So they're not like everybody's office computer that gets shut down, and at the end of the day. So these ones run steady. With IT, he's got us a quote on it, and that's where we went. That's where that price came from. And as we move forward, I'd like to thank you guys for all the years, and then also thank you for the support that you guys gave with the new director and everything. I think she's going to be a crucial addition to this process when we really get going.
Well, I think the thanks goes right back to you for keeping us going. So, on many levels. So thank you.
This version of the budget includes the new dispatcher.
Yes.
So even though it's quite an increase, I think that this is a big increase for a department budget.
Yes.
As much as anything, it's to cover the reality of what it really cost last year to run the department and get it out of the hole. It was partly because we'd been underspending, and it just cost that much to provide that service. And so this is the realization of what that's going to be. Unfortunately, it's a lot more than we'd like it to be, but it is in line with what other departments or other counties are spending in their departments where we've been underspending before. I will reiterate or climb on the back of what Morgan said in terms of thanking you and all of the other people who have joined communications, because of the work that you've been doing has made it into a successful department. I will also nod over on the right to our county administrator and the amount of work that she's had to put in to get us to where we are too. Thank you very much. And hopefully some of that time is relieved in the next few months. But I'm really quite proud of the work that you and that whole department have put into making it a success.
Thank you.
I also appreciate you pointing out the relationship between more staffing in the Sheriff's Department and communications. I think that's an important thing for us to keep an eye on.
So we
as
can
well.
save a lot of money by not giving the sheriff
No.
we can also save it here too.
Well,
What a great idea.
let's ask the towns what they want, because it seems to me that might be top on their list.
I will say that this county, being one of the smallest ones in the state, when you stop and compare our numbers with the bigger ones, we're right there with them. Unfortunately, as much as I hate to say, the EMS and fire is increasing all the time. EMS is really increasing all the time, and I think that's because of the population that we're getting in this county. We're not a young population, so that's going to take a toll on the EMS agencies, which in turn, again, leads back to the comm center. So,
And pleased to see that you are putting in the new computers, because I think we've been discussing that since before the what I'll call the debacle.
Yep.
That we were going to need new computers at that point, but we really didn't have the manpower to do the work.
Correct.
And now that you are a technology guru,
Yes.
we have hopefully the time to make it work right.
Yep. And the state's getting ready to roll out the end of October the new NG 911 phone system. So we'll have the new technologies coming in that, and there's a lot of new tools there that are going to be better for the safety of a lot of people. So
Are the counties still calling you for advice? Good. Thank you.
you're welcome.
And since you brought it up, I think in past years we have either flat funded or not adequately funded the departments that actually need things. So some of these may seem like increases, but we did spend a lot of time line by line in making sure we were fiscally responsible, but also making sure the departments had what they need to be successful. And I think we've built the trust with the towns and with our department heads, where I trust what they're asking for is something that is a collaborative need. So we will see some shifts, but I think it's necessary, and then hopefully it'll start to level off. So thank you for bringing that up. All right.
Next.
Last but not least,
I figured I don't want to hear this.
corrections.
The rest of you can go if you want.
Let me copy for this.
I'll preface with, we are still diligently working on this. This is a very, very rough proposed draft. Don't be alarmed by what you see, but you will be.
So, some of the things mentioned before I get into this is everybody who works on this budget, all of us that are here before you, most of us are county residents. Most of us pay county tax here in Knox County to our town. I think that's sometimes forgotten by the Budget Committee in particular. I think the three of you appreciate it more, but we also feel these impacts when we ask for these things. And I think that it's important maybe to say that out loud for the public, that we're not living outside of this community and coming and asking them to spend all this money on our services. We're feeling it every day ourselves. We also have to ask for services from time to time. I know I have had to use fire and EMS in my personal life. Law enforcement, not so much, because I've been in it most of my life. But, to Bobby's point, that we are becoming a little big town as a county. We are one of the smaller counties in the state, but our demand for service is if we're one of the bigger counties in the state. You're just looking at our two southern partners, Lincoln and Saginaw County in particular. We have twice to three times the call volume and service volume compared to our counterparts in those two counties. And it just, why, we're not sure. We've never been able to figure that out. Is it just the demographic? Is it just the location? You can't get there from here. Mid-Coast Maine is kind of an isolated place. We became a county, we're the youngest county, 1860, because they didn't feel that Waldo and Lincoln government was close enough for this area, so we created Knox County. So I think we're just very unique in that way, and I think the past, it was the past. There was a lot of flat funding, there was a lot of reduced budgets as much as possible. To go back to my law enforcement budget for you, there has not been an increase in that staffing since the mid-90s. There may have been one or two positions here or there, but a lot of those then end up like the MDEA position. We found a way to offset that cost. So there hasn't been a lot of increase in these positions, but yet the service has continually demanded more and more and more. And I think that's very reflective in all these budgets. I gained a true appreciation for that last year, having sat with both Kathy and Amber through that process with every department. And we are working to try to be more efficient. My staff is now helping probate to chase down some of the probate stuff that we didn't think we could help with in the past. We're trying to find these efficiencies. You used the word savings earlier. It's not always savings necessarily, but being more efficient with the money. We are not frivolous. We are not wasteful. We are truly trying to do our best and provide the best service to our communities as possible. So I just felt that needed to be said. So corrections budget. This will be the largest this budget has ever been, and we are approximately $2 million over the cap with what's before you currently. That is before we put in the revenue sources. The reason I want to bring that number up in particular, $7.6 million without revenue. Most of our revenue is dependent on the state jail funding. And as we saw last year, that can get reduced significantly if we don't have the population. As we talked about, we did a great job and kept people out of jail, and our reward was less money to offset our budget with. Whether a good thing or a bad thing, our population has increased. We are expecting to get more revenue, but our budget has also increased. We are seeing just some extremely unprecedented increases across different industries that support us. The correction budget in particular, because everything has to be, just like the airport, internal, we have a much bigger budget anyways. The facility is part of it, all the staffing, all of the contracts. Unlike the other departments, we can kind of spread that out between departments. We can't do that with corrections. But $7.6 million just for corrections is probably a little more than half of our entire county budget at this point. It was very tough. It was very challenging. As Kathy mentioned, we do not have any undesignated fund balance remaining. That is going to make it very difficult because what happens if the boiler plants, which we've talked to you folks about, decide to go out on us this year? Where are we going to find the money to do that? We have a study coming from SMRT hopefully soon that will help us understand better the true scope of what we're going to be dealing with our facility. But what we do know, at least in preliminary discussions, is we've got maybe 15 years left in our current facility, and we're going to have to figure something out before that for what does our future look like. Whether that means going to bond, which today's number is roughly $75 million. Probably in 15 years it's going to be close to $100 million. I know that's tough for any elected official to try to go to the public for those things. But anyway, just very challenging times for corrections in particular. And all of us are working the best we can to try to find those solutions. We still have the District 6 Collaborative. We're trying to work with our partners in that the best we can. But even there's some challenges. Commissioner, you alluded to some counties not doing as well with their finances. And we're seeing that. Fortunately, our county has done well with that. And we're not in that same boat at this point as some of our neighbors. But some of those things are going to impact us, and we're going to feel that ripple effect because, as I found, one sheriff makes a mistake, that means that all 16 sheriffs made that same mistake. We get painted with that broad brush. Same thing for county government just in general. If one county is doing something, we're all going to get painted with that brush. So we've been very diligent and still can't get the budget much below what's before. We're still working on it. We're still trying to work with vendors. We're up for a potential renewal of our medical contract. So we've been working on that with legal. We hopefully will have that out soon so we can see what numbers are. But unfortunately, the projected numbers are anywhere between 1.2 and 1.5 is total. But that's spread out between a couple of different lines here in the budget. But personnel is a huge part of that. And that is in every budget. I know you guys each are seeing that. But of that 7.6, 5 of it is personnel. And we don't have a lot of control there. We have a little control, but not a lot. If we want to have staff and long-term, well-trained staff, we got to pay that cost. And it can be a tough pill for some constituents to swallow, but would you rather have well-trained staff providing the service you want or no service at all, or untrained staff providing the service? Well, untrained staff providing the service is more expensive. As our legal counsel reminds us often, you pay now or you pay later. And sometimes later is more expensive than by paying now. So, like I said, we're still trying to work through some of what we can have, what we can't have. The staffing, we were going to look at trying to add at least 2 more staff to try to offset some vacations and things. that would just tack on another probably $250,000 to add 2 positions. So we didn't feel that was appropriate to ask for in this year. You know, we need it. We didn't feel it was appropriate, and we'll try to make do. Unfortunately, it's a lot of not great news, but as Amber mentioned, we're working every day. We've had a few early mornings and late nights lately trying to figure out different ways to work with contracting. Unfortunately, we had to let a couple of contractors go recently, just to try to pinch those pennies as we get closer to the end of the year, because we're also looking at a potential shortfall in this year's budget that we're trying to make up for as well. So, any questions we'll try to answer.
Question?
You first.
Just an observation. If we don't add 4 deputies, there'll be fewer arrests, right? And if there are fewer arrests, there are fewer people in jail, right? So we would save money here too.
I've had this discussion with the administrator as we try to figure this out. We are not obligated to provide patrol. We are obligated to answer criminal complaints. So the arrests will not go away. But the traffic stops, the speeding enforcement, those things go away. Because
So
the arrest will not go away, unfortunately.
I honestly am not sure if I have a question to ask at this point. Other than, what happens if we can't? What happens if the budget committee says no? What does that look like for you, for the county?
It's odd that you mentioned that, because the next part of our discussion hits on that a little bit. So if you want to table this, but at the end of the day, the short answer is we have no choice. As the sheriff, I am obligated to detain incarcerated people and deliver them to court. As a sheriff, I'm obligated to answer criminal complaints. As a sheriff, I'm obligated to answer civil service requests. So in some ways, there's no choice. Those services have to be adequately funded, and then there's a debate of, well, it's adequate. If we're putting people's lives at risk, then to me that's not adequate. And how do we decide that? I think the communities decide that. It's back to the point of going around meeting with the towns. Tell us what you think you need. Tell us where you think we're falling short, and let's work towards that solution.
But a lot of the increases that we're looking at are things that are mandated by the state anyhow. They're providing those services, whether they're mental health services or drug abuse services, whatever the medical treatment services, those are contractual services that are going up incredibly high. It's not just our stuff. It's not like heating is going up that much. Those are going up at the expense that we normally would expect because of inflation. Even our manpower usage is only going up at what we'd expect it to go up. Most of that increase is not in discretionary funds. They're things that are being required of us by the state.
So for jails in particular, so law enforcement, there are still mandates, they're just not as many. For corrections, there are over 260 jail standards, with 90% of them being mandatory. 40 of those were instituted in the last few years, claiming to have no financial impact according to the state, but when each county assessed that, there was a financial impact by us. We have the Community Corrections Professional Standards Council has been trying to work with the state and saying, start paying your fair share, stop flat funding us, but that has not had a lot of traction yet. So to your point, these mandates are coming. There was supposed to be an obligation by the state to help pay for some of these mandates that has been just flat funded versus meeting their fair share, if you will. So yes, that is one of the biggest things for corrections in particular is just these continual mandated service requirements.
And we are working on a Plan B, C, D, E, F, G regarding the corrections budget. That's part of the diligence that this team is doing. We want to make sure we're prepared for all options when we come to present. But wanted to be fully transparent with where we are today.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, it's just a big sigh.
So full of good news, right?
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure you're going to keep working on this before we get the final, but it's probably not going to get much better. No.
Yeah, we'll, like I said, we'll keep working on it. There are some options out there. Like I said, we're still communicating with our partners in District 6 to see if there's any relief that we can find in those fashions. You know, we've been working very well as a partnership as far as trying to share services and find efficiencies. I think the potential to find something is there. The question is just a matter of when.
I think just on a general basis, and this brings in financing, what we heard earlier, is the smaller our unspent funds from last year, or that we've now spent because we don't have any undesignated fund balance left, means that this budget, as we cut it finer and finer, becomes a little more dangerous, because we don't have the backup in a checking account somewhere that we can tap into if we need to. And especially in an old jail like that, where we know we've been meeting to discuss boiler systems and hot water systems, that we start getting closer and closer to, at some point, you talk about what happens if they don't, if the budget doesn't pass. To some extent, the budget passing isn't really that much better, because it is so close. And hopefully that nothing happens, that we can get through a year and get into the next year so that those costs level out again. But it is a close and it is a tightrope walk, and I appreciate all the work that everybody puts in to get it this close. Yeah. That's not very hopeful, is it? No.
Honest.
Sometimes the reality has to be said.
Yeah. Much better to say it than to not, as some of our colleagues have discovered.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the last piece we wanted to touch on carefully is our grant funding that has recently had some ebbs and flows at the state and federal level. We did receive some guidance from the state at the state level, not even through a grant level, that basically says grant, no grant, nonprofit, public, you're complying with the detainees through immigration law regardless. So I'm going to pass those to you, and I'm going to hand it to the sheriff to further explain that. But it will be a good thing for you to digest, and I'll try to mark up as we discuss accepting or not accepting grants to offset some of these budgets, mainly airport, EMA, and sheriff.
So, as you are all familiar, ICE in particular, or Border Patrol, or anything to do with immigration, has been a pretty hot topic. And as Amber said, we're not necessarily looking to engage in a conversation. This is information for you to digest and make a decision on. Some counties have already made some decisions. Some have been pretty heated and very debated. And I don't envy us from that political lens. We have constituents that feel certain ways on both sides of this issue. I think it's up to us to, again, to your words, walk a tightrope to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all of our constituents. So basically what you have before you is a letter that was produced for the Community Corrections Professional Standards Council. So that is a committee set up by the governor to work with the Department of Corrections in dealing with us as the counties and our funding crisis problems, our staffing problems, those types of things. Basically work through some issues with us. That was set up a few years ago. Kevin Joyce, Sheriff of Cumberland County in particular, brought an issue to the council. He's the largest correctional facility for counties in the state. He has the largest jail. He has had contracts with federal agencies to house their incarcerated folks there for some time. So he reached out and said, hey, we're getting a lot of pushback from constituents around some of the language that's going to come in a lot of these DHS grants. That they don't feel that it's right for us to have to be compelled to cooperate, all of these things. So that was given to the Department of Corrections in the state of Maine. They went back, did some research, and brought this letter and the supporting documentation back. Long story short, it says a commission absolutely has the right to deny grants. You can deny money or you can accept money. It's totally up to you. What they wanted to make clear in this letter is that I, as the sheriff, regardless of your decision to accept money or not, I am still compelled to hold all detained individuals for any law enforcement officer that is operating in this state, whether they're federal, state, or local. I'm not necessarily required to incarcerate them, and where we define that line is about 72 hours, basically an arraignment period. If they haven't made it, they have to make it to a judge within 48 hours for arraignment. So we've traditionally called 72-hour hold. So the governor's office, the Department of Corrections have basically said, yes, sheriffs, you will and are obligated to still do this regardless of your commission's choice. So just want you to be aware of that as we look at some of these grants, that I'm still going to be compelled to do some things, even though some of our constituents may not like it, but I will, just like I reiterated in the past, I will do it within the confines of the law. If they don't get before a judge within a certain period of time, I then am compelled to also let that person return to the community. So we've been having this discussion with our partners. We haven't seen it as a problem here in Knox County. Other counties around us have. But I'm just trying to get ahead of it a little bit so it isn't a problem for us.
There's a lot of politics to discuss here, and a lot of legal niceties because we're talking about 3 or 4 different things at the same time. One of the problems that citizens have with ICE arrests is oftentimes they are warrantless, and they have no intention of bringing this person before a judge. So what you're saying is we're not going to hold them, or unless we agree to hold them, these detainees, until they're seen by a judge, or 72 hours, whichever comes first. So it sort of is a step over from what people are complaining about, right? We're saying, you're saying that we have to hold them for 72 hours.
If they have probable cause.
If they have probable cause for whatever it is. But after that, we don't have to.
Correct.
And what we're worried about is the after 72 hours if they haven't seen a judge as much as anything. And this doesn't touch on the grants that we've been talking about. You brought it up as grants, not just your grants, the Operation Stone Garden grants, but also the grants for EMA and any of the other federal money grants that have now included wording that says we have to comply with whatever immigration laws that they want us to comply with. This is separate from that too.
Sort of.
Sort of, but we haven't gotten a determination on what they're going to force us to do, even if we say we're not going to take their money.
Well, this letter said what they're going to force us to do.
Right.
If we don't take the money, we still have to do X.
But that's just for corrections. That's not for patrol.
Well, actually it is, because it talks about our engagement with law enforcement, period. So it refers to Title 25, which is our cooperation with law enforcement partners. And then we still have to cooperate, but it still has to be within the confines of our state laws. We can't unreasonably detain people. So an example I use is if I make a stop for somebody who's speeding, they may or may not be, somebody of interest for Border Patrol or ICE, but I can still only hold them as long as that traffic stop would normally take me. I can't hold them longer just because another agency wants me
Right, which is what the grant language requires us to do.
Sort of.
It's too vague.
It probably would be good to have legal review.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that before. I know it's another expense, but just because my concern is, maybe it's not a concern, but service still needs to get done, to your question earlier. If somebody's willing to give us a little money to help that service along, but at what cost?
Right, that's going to be the balance we have to figure out. Yep.
In terms of legal costs, I'm assuming all of the counties are, maybe they don't all view it with the same lens, but at least several of the counties, I would assume, are having these same conversations. Is there, a collaborative review that we could do with other counties so that we could reduce legal costs, so that we're sharing that load with other counties? Is that possible?
I would think if some were, I would have to say that Amber's probably best suited to figure that out. We, the sheriffs, most of us have different legal counsel in our counties. I think about half the counties have one legal counsel that could represent them all. There's a case right now still being heard by the state with regards to some habeas corpus violations with the sheriffs or the counties, because the sheriffs were sued as part of that. But I think we have 2 or 3 attorneys between all 16 counties representing us. So I think there is some ability to bring all of them together on this type of issue as well.
But I'll do some due diligence at the
Okay.
county administrator.
Thank you.
And I think it's an ongoing conversation. And I think this just came to fruition a few days ago.
Literally,
so
it was just the other day that got to me. Apparently, Cumberland's had it for a few days, so you may or may not have seen, but Sheriff Joyce was in a meeting similar to this to talk about their contract with his commissioners. They got a little heated at the end because he basically said, as law enforcement officer, I still have to follow the law. Though some of my constituents may not understand it, I have to do what I have to do. So we got a little heated, but it is. It's a conversation that's actually going on everywhere.
And it seems like there are pending lawsuits. I'm not sure about specifically about this grant and contract language, but I know with EMA, we have been through this with EMA, that there are pending lawsuits that we don't even know what the final language is going to be in these grants. So I think it behooves us to continue down the path until we understand really what we're up against, but not to put ourselves out of the running for any money if indeed it is just business as usual.
I'm assuming, and that's really where this is different, this is not related to any grants.
Correct. This is
not-
basically
This
saying,
is just
Right.
something we have to
Yeah.
do
Yes.
because the
Yes.
state has interpreted it that that's how we have to do it in the federal government. This is not about money.
Right.
This is about what we have to do. The pile over here is what happens if we agree by signing a contract, which is what a grant is.
Yes.
We'll still need to vet all of those and make sure the
Yeah,
language
no,
is there.
I
But
understand that, but this is.
this is more for, this is the measure to weigh it against.
Yes.
Yes. Right. Right.
Thank you. Appreciate it so much.
Hopefully we get plenty of phone calls.
Oh, I expect so, yeah. Thank you. Well,
That's it.
that's it?
That's it.
We have everybody assembled in here. Is there anyone who would like to address us about anything in the budget or anything else while you have us here? If not, I mean, you can just raise your hand a little bit, and I'll. But if not, then I will request a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn, and I will second it. Our next meeting is on Tuesday, 10 o'clock. 2 o'clock is our regular standard meeting.
And then Thursday is our first joint budget and commission meeting.
At
Thursday
what time?
5 p.m.
Sure?
Yes. positive.
The motion is to adjourn. All those in favor? 2 in favor, none opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Appreciate your work.